Did you know that the best way to flat tow an automatic Jeep is with the transmission in park, and it actually doesn't accrue any miles on the odometer while being towed? We flat tow our 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee behind our Class A motorhome, and we've towed it across the country this way without any issues. We get a lot of questions about the setup of how we hook it up, why we flat tow, why don't we use a trailer, so we're gonna walk you through all of that today. But before we do, why don't we use a trailer?
It really is one word: simplicity. I mean, for us, we don't want to have to manage a trailer. We don't want to unload the trailer, load the trailer, have to store the trailer. For us, it's a quick hookup, which we're going to show you in a few minutes here. Flat towing is the simplest way to go.
Yeah, and the other problem is that most RV parks do not have space for a trailer. So our motorhome is 45 feet long. Most of the RV spots that we park in are barely 50 feet. So we'd have no space for a trailer, and a lot of places don't have extra space for parking. If they do, then they charge extra for that. So for us, in the amount of times that we move locations and we pack up and go to other places, a trailer just really isn't an option for us because it takes a lot more time and it really limits the places that we're able to go.
Simplicity.
Yeah, but before we get to it and show the whole setup of how we actually flat tow it, one other question for you. How are you able to flat tow it with the transmission in park? Because that seems totally counterintuitive to anything you've ever heard. Like, if you put something in park, the wheels aren't going to turn.
Yeah, so it has to be a four-wheel drive. It has to have a transfer case. And again, with Jeep, you put the transfer case in neutral, which isolates all of the wheels from the transmission. You put the transmission in park, so you don't get viscous coupling, which actually damages the transmission. Again, it's about the transfer case being in neutral, transmission being in park.
And so many times people think that we're doing that wrong, but we are following the manufacturer's instructions. So if you look in the Jeep manual for our vehicle specifically, we follow the exact instructions that they say. So if you're watching this video, just make sure you take a look at the manual for your own specific vehicle. There are a number of vehicles that can be flat towed, but Jeeps are the most common vehicle because they're designed by Jeep for this specific use case of being towed behind a motorhome. All right, well, without further ado, let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Like I mentioned earlier, we like to flat tow because it's simple. So what I'm going to walk you through is how quick we can set this thing up and get it connected to our tow bar and get ready to flat tow. So we actually use Blue Ox, and the reason that we use the Blue Ox because it's simple. And we've got the Blue Ox base plate, we've got the Blue Ox tow bar. Tow bar is actually always connected to the RV. We never disconnect it, so it just sits here regardless of whether we're using it or not, which makes it super simple. So the first thing that we do is actually connect the quick connect. So these just plug into our base plate. Simple as that. We've got two of these, one on each side.
And Kris actually did the whole base plate install on the Jeep himself. It was relatively simple, got it all from Blue Ox. So if you're interested in seeing how that went, you can check out our other YouTube video, which is linked below.
So we use the Blue Ox Apollo tow bar, which is rated for 15,000 pounds. Our Jeep is about 6,500 pounds. So the tow bar is more than adequate to tow our Jeep, plus some of the junk that we throw in it sometimes when we're pulling. But again, as I mentioned, this thing is always attached to the back of the RV. So for us, it's a simple kind of fold out, hook each of these extendable arms up to the pins, which sometimes have a mind of their own.
What's really frustrating is when Kris forgets to move the car close enough to the tow bar and he's got to move it again, or I have to move it again.
It is handy when you get it right the first time. These things are designed to go on a specific way. You can't see it, but there's an up sign right here. So just make sure that you get them mounted correctly. Then once you got the pins in there, we've got some clevis pins that just lock these pins in place. We've also got then the safety cables. So, you know, it's important to interlock the safety cables. I've got left to right, right to left. One of the things that you'll also notice is normally you want this nice and flat, but again, because our RV is parked and it's actually leveled, RV is actually down on the airbags. Once we get going and level, this thing will level out, so we'll have a nice level tow situation. Then we hook up the electric. So for us, we got the umbilical cord for all the lights.
It's called an umbilical cord?
I call it an umbilical cord, and I actually think it is called an umbilical cord, but it just connects all the lights and the power. We've got it hooked up so it powers all of our lights, but then also has a 12-volt connection, so it's constantly charging our battery, because sometimes we'll drive for 2-3 days without actually running the Jeep.
So what happens when we drive it for a couple days and it doesn't have the 12-volt connection?
Well, there's a chance if you run it for a couple of days without the 12-volt connection that you could kill the battery. There are some things in the Jeep that are always on and always running, the computers and things. Belts and suspenders, extra safety to make sure that we always have a charged battery whenever we park the Jeep or whenever we stop towing the Jeep. Jeep. Then the last thing is the emergency braking system. So we've got this as part of our Blue Ox setup, and I just connect that to the Jeep underneath on the RV. That way, if something were to happen to the tow bar and the safety change and all of those things were to break, this would disconnect. It would engage the brakes on the Jeep. The Jeep would come to a stop and hopefully not run into ongoing traffic or something.
So hopefully that's not something we ever have to worry about, but that is the final fail-safe.
Yeah. But again, I think what's important here is that people talk about the fact that they want it, they think we should use a trailer or the speed of a trailer. You watch this is in real time. It took me 2 minutes. Not something I do every day. I certainly have a little bit of experience with it, but the average person set these things up in 2 minutes. It's much quicker than a trailer. So now that we have everything set up outside, we're gonna go inside the Jeep and make sure that we get the ride height set, we get the transmission in park, we get the transfer case in neutral, we get the emergency braking system set up, and it's all ready to be flat towed. Okay, now that we have the outside fully set up, it's time to get the inside set up. So a couple of key things. You'll notice that I'm sitting here in my seat belt and the door closed. It's important, and Jeep's recommendation, that as you do this, you shut the door, all the doors, and also make sure that your seat belt's on. So start it up. This is a 4xe, so it doesn't matter whether the engine kicks on or it's in electric mode. They're both the same. I've got my foot on the brake, another key feature or recommendation from Jeep. So the first thing we want to make sure is that the ride height is in normal mode. Ours actually right now is sitting at the lowest height, so we'll push it up to normal height. And again, this won't move unless you've got the door shut and the seat belt on and your foot on the brake. So you can see that because we've done all that, the ride height's now back to normal. So that's the way that they recommend to flat tow. So now we've got the ride height normal. We're going to put the transmission in neutral. Once we have the transmission in neutral, I'm going to put the transfer case in neutral by pressing this button and holding it down for a few seconds. Now we've got the transfer case in neutral, and we're going to put the transmission back in park. Now a couple other things that I want to touch on is I personally like to go into settings and make sure that my automatic emergency brake system is off. My forward collision and my pedestrian emergency system is off. Jeep doesn't recommend it, but I think it's just an extra safety feature. And then also,
just in case somehow the computer were to kick back on, we just want to make sure it doesn't all of a sudden kick on the brake.
Exactly. And then make sure that my auto park brake is off. So those three things I think are just extra safety to make sure that we don't have any braking issues while we're driving. So now we've got ride height set, transfer case in neutral, transmission in park, automatic features turned off, and then we just turn the engine off and we should be good to go. Okay, the last thing that we install is the Patriot braking system from Blue Ox for emergency braking. This simply sits on the floor and attaches to our brake pedal. Again, pretty straightforward and quick. So this is used to brake the vehicle should anything actually come loose or if that emergency braking system needs to be triggered. So once you get the braking system attached to the brake pedal, it's as simple as plugging it into a 12-volt circuit, powering it up, making sure that it's the right distance from the seat because it uses the seat to actually push on the brake pedal, and now we're set to go.
And this would actually engage if that pink cable came disconnected.
Yeah, this is our emergency braking system, so if that pink cable gets pulled out, this will engage and stop the vehicle.
So in this video, it took us longer than a couple minutes like it usually does because we were walking you all through all the instructions and step-by-step how to do it. But seriously, when Kris does this normally, I mean, it seriously takes like 2 to 3 minutes. It is by far the easiest way to flat tow a vehicle. So if you're interested in flat towing, make sure that you've got a car that is capable of being flat towed. Check out the different types of tow bar options. We use Blue Ox, works great. There might be others available as well. And just make sure that you know what you're doing before you get going.
Yeah, I mean, like we said in the beginning, it's all about simplicity for us, and this is the simplest way for us and the quickest way for us to tow on a regular basis.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really important is that when you first start out, make sure that all the wheels are rolling. It's possible that you might have forgot something, or the transmission stayed in park, or a brake kicked on. So whenever we leave, Hillary's always walking around, typically because I drive, but Hillary's always walking around and making sure that yes, the vehicle's rolling and everything looks okay. It's a crucial part of the safety procedure as you take off.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that all 4 wheels are rolling, that there's no problems. And what's weird is when we're driving this RV, we have a camera in the back where we can see the Jeep, but you can't see the tires or anything. So you want to make sure that everything is set up properly before you get going. So we are fully hooked up and ready to get going. We are actually going to be leaving tomorrow morning. So we'll show you all when we get rolling out of here what it looks like when we leave. But if you have any questions, be sure to drop us a comment and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.